Hey everyone, Lee with LG Speed and Custom here. In this video, we are figuring out a pedal assembly on John's 1950 Fargo. So I guess this is video 6 on John's 1950 Fargo. Video 1, we took it all apart. Video 2, we put the Fat Man Fabrication IFS suspension in. Video 3, we mounted this 454 Chevy with a T10 4-speed. Video 4 and 5, we covered building this Firewall, toe boards, and toe board setup. And now in video 6, we are going to install this RJ Speed Shop swinging pedal assembly. So originally, this truck, the pedals came through the floor from the underneath and they were mounted to the bell housing on the original engine. Obviously, when the original engine came out, so did the pedal assembly. So we had to come up with a plan B. Plan B was originally, I got another under the floor pedal assembly. However, I didn't take into consideration how narrow the frame rails were on this truck. This is designed to go on like a Model A or a 32, 34 Ford frame. And the frame rail sits really close to the outside of the body on those cars. This sits really inboard, so that pedal assembly, the clutch and the brake were gonna come out like kind of about where the gas pedal would normally be on a car. So I decided rather than cutting all that up to make it work, we'll just do a Firewall mounted assembly. So that's where this came in. This is made by RJ Speed Shop, and very nice piece, very reasonably priced for what it is, and it mounts to the Firewall on the inside like this and has a brake pedal and a clutch pedal. It's got a dual reservoir setup. We're using like a GM Corvette style master cylinder and a Willwood master cylinder for the clutch. So the last video when we did the Firewall and stuff, the engine was still in here. Since then, I've done a lot of things on this while I was waiting for that pedal assembly. Obviously, engine and transmission has come back out. We have, let me bring you in here and I'll show you. With the engine out, I've gone ahead and welded up the last of the motor mounts. These motor mounts, by the way, are available on my website, lgspeedcustom.com. Along with that, I've also put a little reinforced boxing plate on the inside of our current boxing plates because I was sitting there looking at it and realized that like the weight on the engine is pushing down on this, which was pushing on our boxing plate, kind of right in the middle, and I thought like over time that boxing plate might start to bow. So we just reinforced it front and back. I got little notches in the bottom here, so that if we got to run like a fuel line or something through there, we've got room to do that. Along with that, obviously, we've got some paint on here now. Jim painted this the other day, and once that was all painted, I actually went ahead and powder coated all these control arms. We'll cover that in a bit, but yeah, we've got a powder coating set up here now, so we can powder coat all this stuff. Isn't that great? John, that owns the truck, when I was welding the Firewall and stuff up, he thought, you know, why don't we take care of all the unnecessary holes? So I've gone ahead and welded up any hole that wasn't still being used with our current setup. And that kind of brings the Firewall to what you see now. So this is pretty much ready for primer surfacer. However, before we put that in, we got to get these pedals mounted. So this pedal assembly looks like it's going to be pretty straightforward. Shannon was here earlier today, and her and Lux sat in here, and she kind of acted as like my model for pedal position, and we tried it out in a lot of various spots, and kind of if we mount it right there, which happens to be the easiest spot to mount it, you know, she said that was a very comfortable position for stepping on the pedals. I thought maybe it would have to go a little bit higher, but she said when we mounted it higher, she had to, in order to step on the clutch or the brake, she would actually have to lift her foot and step on it. Whereas when we had it in the first position there, right there, she can just, you know, pivot her foot from the gas to the brake, to the clutch, etc. So I think that's where we're going to mount it. Should be pretty straightforward. I think we can just get away with, you know, drilling a couple holes. I don't know if we need to weld this in or if we can bolt this in. I haven't really looked at it that far yet. Maybe we'll throw it on the bench and see if we want to bolt this assembly in or weld it in. I'm thinking bolted in would probably be the best. So I don't know if I can hold the camera and get this up in here all at the same time so that you guys can see. But, well, maybe. I don't know. It's a little awkward. But basically, we're going to mount this guy right in there as high as we can. We've got the steering column drop up there, the column support. We're going to go up until we touch that and then move over until this edge here basically is going to sit along this edge here. And then it's, you know, it's almost as easy as just drilling a couple holes. However, we've got this little pocket. And that's why I held off with priming the firewall, is because I had a feeling that we might have to cut this out because we want a flat surface for that to sit on. I think I'm gonna take the pedal assembly and maybe set it on the bench, grab our master cylinders and mock it up and just kind of see where we're at. So with our master cylinders, we've got our GM style for the brakes and then this Willwood one for the clutch. You know, we've got lots of room that we can probably have a bolt on all four corners of this guy that will bolt to the firewall. So I think we'd probably have one probably coming out about there, one coming out about there, but then this side's gonna get weird. So we might, I think we're gonna have to cut this right out. Just debating right now if we just cut this pocket out and shape a new piece that goes in, or to bring everything kind of to this plane. I wonder if we should cut this whole piece out and then we can, you know, roll a new piece in the bead roller that kind of recesses the whole thing. And the only reason I was thinking of that is because then it would kind of match the passenger side a little bit better. That's how the heater box mounts, is in that little recessed pocket. So we kind of have two squares. So I'm gonna have a moment and just kind of sit and think about that to see if that's the way I want to do it, or if I want to just remove that pocket. We can always like put a spacer between there. I don't know. I don't know if we can make that work if we have to. I'm just trying to decide if it's easier to make something that works with this or just that. That's a lot of welding, is the only downside to that. So I've decided I'm going to start by just removing this piece itself. It looks like it ends right here, but it actually goes all the way up to here. So I'm going to just chop that right out, then mock the pedals up again and make the new piece that has this recessed in it, but I'm going to make the recessed line basically like the size of this piece here, so that almost like a little pocket for it. So we'll chop that out and then go from there. So I've got that cut out, which is cool because now I can actually like mock this up and hold it in with vice grips. Before I was just holding it and Shannon was in there and I was trying to like hold the pedal where it needed to be. But now that it's mocked up and I've put the master for the clutch on, I've threaded it out all the way and we got our pedal height all the way out, but it's hitting the floor before it bottoms out. And I've run out of room on our adjuster right here. So I was thinking, oh, we'll just make a longer adjuster. But now that I'm sitting here in it, I'm pushing like right here. So I think we can move the pedal higher on the firewall, the whole pedal assembly, which will give us more travel. The downside to that is we are hitting our steering column mount right here. We can't go any higher. So I think I have to notch this out so that this little, might be able to see it better from this side here. Yeah, if we can notch that out so that that will go up higher, then we can move this assembly higher, which will give us more travel. So I'm gonna make a little mark on there and then probably just go under from the bottom with a hole saw and cut it out so that that'll slide up. Here's where we want to notch out, just so that this little ear can slide up in there. So our whole column drop is probably about 6 inches wide, and we're gonna take an inch out of there, which I think will probably be fine. There's not a lot of stress on here anymore now that it's gonna be power steering. I know some people mentioned in the last video they were a bit concerned about how thin this got when I flattened it out. And there's hardly any stress on here compared to a manual setup. Ray's 53 Mercury over here that Jim is working on, it has an aftermarket, like a I Did It style column in it. And the flat spot on here is basically, you know, the same thickness as what that one ended up at. So I think it'll be fine. All right, our hole is notched out and I've got this mocked back up in there. It still feels really comfortable when I try it. Like I don't have to lift my foot up to get it on the pedal. And more importantly, it bottoms out in the master cylinder just as it's touching the ground. So I think that's gonna be our permanent home. So now we can just ignore this. That's just in there for spacing. It wanted to kick over when Jim clamped it in there. So now I think we can build our little piece in here. The master cylinder, when I mock it up, it kind of rolls right into this little corner, which is kind of lame. In hindsight, if I had known that we were gonna go this route, I probably wouldn't have bothered with this and probably just removed, you know, most of that and just had it flat, I guess. But I don't know, we can still make it work. With this sitting where I think I want it now, we need to make a template to go there. But our vice grips are in the way. So what I'm gonna attempt to do is, we've got our master cylinder holes. There should be one hole somewhere in here. We can see it on the inside. This guy right here. So I'm going to drill that hole and then put a nut and bolt through there, tighten it really good, and hope that gravity doesn't pull that down. And then that pedal assembly should sit in place, hopefully long enough that I can make a template for it. Well, I don't believe it, but this single nut and bolt is holding it nice and secure and level. So now we can make a template that's got these holes in it here, and we'll probably bring this line kind of like that. Actually, maybe to there. I don't know. I don't know yet. Still figuring it. You'll probably never really even see most of this because it's going to have the master cylinders hanging there. This little, like this is sitting flat on here right now, obviously. So where this nut and bolt is, there was a space there. So I've got some washers to take up that distance. Otherwise, when I tighten that up, it would just crank this guy out like that. All right, things are moving. Okay, I've got some plastic held on here with some magnets. Magnets, how do they even work? Okay, I'm gonna draw this body line back in there. And another one right there. And that's gonna represent the inside of the line and the outside of the line. And that line kind of went that way, like so. All right, now that's gonna be there. That's gonna be there. Get our clutch. And now our actual pedal assembly bracket is going to sit there. And I want our new body line to basically be the perimeter of that. So we might even just consider that our inside line, and then our outside line will just kind of go this way. And I think that'll be okay. All right, I'm gonna transfer this to some sheet metal. Oh, you know what? We need this part. Okay. Transfer this to some 18 gauge. Okay, here's our piece. I trimmed that excess off. I left a little bit to overlap so that we can cut through both panels and make a nice butt weld. Basically, this is going to sit in there pretty much like that. So we'll cut around here and weld it in. We got a little weird here, but we can, we'll just save this for last, and we can probably, once we get this kind of tacked in place, we can take the hammer and dolly and maybe manipulate that into its spot. So yeah, if we weld that in there, then once it's welded in, we'll put our pedal assembly back on and drill our holes through the backside like we did there. And I think everything should be good. That's all welded up, and I ground it with 36 grit, then 80 grit, then finish it off with the sander with some 80 grit on there. And it turned out really good. I'm happy with it. It's still a little funky up in this top corner. I kind of just faked it through there, but I think because it's a firewall and there's going to be a master cylinder sitting there and another master there, and then we got this guy going through here, it'll be fine. Nobody will ever see it or notice. So we still got to do our big holes through here. To do that, I have taken the pedals out of this bracket. I think I'm going to put the bolts through and weld them on the back side, and that way it'll just make it a little bit easier to work on this thing and service it if you have to. If you got to change the master cylinder or whatever, these will kind of turn into studs, which will also help with holding it in place. Like you could almost put it on one person, slide it through and put your nuts on, and bam. So I'm going to weld those bolts in to act like studs. Then we'll bolt this in place and use this as a template and take a hole saw and drill our two big holes. With these studs welded on here, should be able to just pop this thing through, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. It's still pretty hot. What's going on here? So the problem with this is I can't see what I'm doing. I think we gotta ream the holes out a little bit. How's that? There we go. Okay, I'm gonna tighten that up. And then we can drill our holes with the hole saw. With our holes drilled, I've bolted the master cylinder on. So we got this little corner here that we got to deal with because it doesn't want to sit flat because of that. So my kind of thought was, remember how I put a spacer behind here and we had it mocked up, like in between the pedal assembly and the firewall? I was thinking I could build a spacer on this side, but I just realized that because I've already welded those studs on, I kind of got ahead of myself and there's not enough thread sticking through. So we'll just go to plan B, which was actually originally plan A. I traced this with a Sharpie. I'm gonna pull this off and we'll just kind of hammer this edge flat, which I don't know if it'll be as clean as if we had put a spacer in there like I was originally planning, but it'll still be okay. I'm gonna warm this up with the torch, which is gonna do two things. The heat's gonna shrink this metal because it's being stretched because of that. And it's also gonna make it easier to move. Jim is gonna hold a dolly on the back side, and then I'm gonna take this big hammer here and try to just flatten that out along that line. All right. Beautiful. That worked pretty good, actually. All right, let's see how this fits now. Bam. Perfect. All right, let's put everything together and we'll mock it up and see what it's like. Bam. What's up, Master Cylinders? That worked out great. So if we go inside, we've got our pedals all set up, our little push rods all mocked up. So we still got to build something for actual like pedal pads. I think these are designed for early Ford ones. So the clutch one, I'm thinking we'll probably put something dead on, but this one, because you know, it kind of should be a little bit further over that way, but we couldn't go any further that way because of this guy here. So I think we'll just make like a rectangular pedal pad maybe that kind of sits more right here. Jim was just sitting in here and I was standing in that hole down there and held the gas pedal up, and we've determined that that's a pretty happy spot for the gas pedal right there. It feels nice and comfortable, and it's far enough away from the brake that you can drive this thing with boots on and your feet aren't going to get all intertangled. So I think I'll mount that. Next, it's just a simple matter of drilling a couple holes, and then we'll build some pedal pads somehow. All right, our gas pedal is mounted. It'll sit probably about like that. Obviously, it's not indexed properly yet. We got to hook the cable and everything up to do that. I've also gone ahead and drilled the hole that the cable is going to go through. So I think the gas is done almost. It's almost done. I think I'm going to replace these with nut certs like this, just because putting these gas pedals in by yourself sucks. So I've held off on building some pedals because I found out that Bob Drake sells like the round pedals, like what early Fords use, but they're adjustable. They got 2 inches of side to side movement in them. So I'm gonna get a set of those because they're cheaper than building something. What I am gonna do though is, let me slide the light over here so you can see. So watch this push rod here when I pull this pedal back. Now in theory, there should never be a reason to pull the pedal back, but you know, maybe one day your foot might accidentally get caught underneath and you pull it back like that, and then the push rod comes out. I mean, you got to pull it back far, but that's something that we don't want to happen because, you know, if that happens, you've got no brakes. So I think I'm going to build something that welds to here that will stop, you know, like a little pedal stop basically to stop that from moving back and potentially falling out. This might be as easy as just welding this bolt right to the side of our little steering column drop. Beautiful. So I don't know if we need like return springs on these pedals. Probably not. I think they'll just be fine on their own. If not, I mean, we can always add springs later, but I think they'll be okay. All right, there we go. We got some pedals in this thing. So I don't want to pull this apart just yet because I want John to come down and sit in it to make sure that he's happy with everything. And if he's happy with it, I don't see why he wouldn't be. He's a pretty easygoing, good customer. If he's happy with it and content, then we're gonna blow this apart and I'm gonna paint the firewall, put some polyester surfacer, block sand it. I don't think we'll need any body filler on here. It's pretty good as is, and it's a firewall, so it doesn't have to be like laser straight. So yeah, we'll do that. We'll paint the firewall, and then once the firewall is painted, we can start putting this thing back together for good. I think we can plumb our brakes. We gotta plumb our fuel system still. We gotta make power steering lines, brake hoses, stuff like that. So yeah, we'll probably resume at that point. I don't think anybody wants to watch me do a whole video on sanding a firewall. That's boring. So we're gonna call this video here, and we'll probably come back in a few weeks when this is all painted. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks to RJ Speed Shop for setting us up with this great pedal assembly. That was awesome. It worked out really well. If you want to support the channel, please check out the website, lgspeedcustoms.com. Get some LG Speed and Custom merch. We got stickers, t-shirts, and everything. So see you guys later. Thanks again.